Okay. Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of Wick TV. It's a cross ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And, gang, have we got a show for you tonight? We got a couple more coming. They're on their way, but I wanted to start on time for all of you, my lovely audience, so that you can have the best experience possible. Tonight, we will be talking about the downfall of America. Are we in the decline, the final decline of the American empire? To what extent is America falling? What is the cause? Is it fixable? And what can we do if it's not falling to keep it from falling? We got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to go over. We're going to have some great conversations here, and we got some great guests to do it. Like I said, we got a couple more coming. When they get here, I'll pull them in, and they'll be able to say their piece. We're going to start with first-time guest on my channel, the Ivory Fool. Go ahead, tell people who you are, what you do, and what are your thoughts. Is America fallen? Go ahead.
Hey everyone, I'm the Ivory Fool, or I like to say I'm the Fool of the Ivory Tower. So I think that America is not in its downfall, and it has become increasingly common to compare the Trump administration to Nazi Germany, but a better comparison would be to compare America as a whole to the conditions just prior to the French Revolution. The ultimate outcome of that revolution was an authoritarian imperialist takeover via Napoleon, and I see this as a very likely outcome of a left-wing populist backlash if the Trump administration fails, and I personally believe it will fail. However, I don't see this as the most likely outcome. As a center-left liberal, I acknowledge that the populists have grasped something deeply real. The dominant paradigm has been petrified into inaction and allowing the middle class to slowly bleed out. A contemporary example is California Metro taking something like 12 years from legislation passing to actually laying down any track, or something like Republicans passing tax cuts to enrich stockholders without any increase in innovation or venture capital. A lack of decisiveness plagues our political elite, just as it did in the build-up to the French Revolution. But the world and our knowledge is vastly different now than it was in the 18th century. We have more technology, more theories, more social systems to implement feedback, action plans, and adjust systems in real time. And should civil unrest reach a peak in the coming decade, I'm confident that liberals and conservatives alike will reject elitism and embrace decisiveness.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here. We'll get into it as we go, and we'll kind of discuss. Next up, no stranger to my channel, Big Papa Buckaroo. Give us what you got.
Yo, what's up? I'm Big Papa Buckaroo. I think America is in decline. I was so interested by that opening from the Ivory Fool, so I'm very excited for this debate. I think America is in decline. I think our choice to almost completely abandon soft power is, going to be our detriment. I think we're losing trust of a lot of other countries. We're seeing stocks plummet. We're seeing, an almost all-time drop in the worth of the dollar since Trump started his term. Frankly, I think.
Sorry about that. Am I back?
Okay.
Can you see me? I don't know why we
Yes.
have this.
Yes.
This happens more often than I'd like. We have little hiccups. But hopefully we're back, and give it a second so they can be back on my channel and people can see me again, and then we'll get into the conversation. Am I back? Are we back? F's in chat, or are we good? It's good on YouTube now? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Buckaroo, for that. Sorry it was interrupted, but we'll get into it.
All good, as long as you heard me.
Most of it, yes. Let's give it to New York Shade. Give us what you got.
Thank you, Wick.
So sorry.
This is New York Shade. I just do this for fun. I'm going to be a bit of a mouth breather today because I'm recovering from being sick, but bear with me. So I'm actually taking Buckaroo's stance. I think America is falling. Over the last decade, mental illness has surged 24%, with young adults seeing a 56% spike. Adolescent suicide rates are up nearly 50% in that same time frame. We're below replacement fertility rates, facing an existential population crisis as cultural trends go unaddressed. We're fatter than we've ever been, and our global ranking and life expectancy continues to decline. For the first time, the average American cannot afford a home, and sustaining a family on one income is a fantasy. It's a pipe dream. 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and the wealth gap has exploded. Upper income families had 28 times the wealth of lower income ones in 1983, ballooning to 75 times by 2016. Nearly half of households have no retirement savings, and 42% have no stake in equity markets. Our middle class is crumbling, with real household debt doubling since 2005. Liberals claim to champion the working class, but after holding power for 12 of the last 16 years, their policies, open trade deals, overregulation, and cultural shifts have made things substantially worse. Davos globalist elites have hollowed out the country we love. We need a bold pivot to nationalist, family-first policies, tax cuts for small businesses, incentives for home ownership, and a renewed focus on faith and community. And I say this as an atheist, to rebuild the American dream before it's too late.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Can I just...
Go ahead, yes.
I'm so sorry. I just needed to correct. I cited something incorrectly. I meant to say that the Dow Jones Industrial Average has dropped 9.1% in the first 3 weeks of April. That's what I meant, not the dollar. My apologies. The dollar has dropped 5.5.
Okay. Well, thank you for the correction. And now that we have set the stage here and everyone's kind of given their position, given all that Buckaroo and I'm just curious, Ivory, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. Given all the things that have been cited by both New York Shade and Buckaroo, why don't you feel like we are a nation in decline? What positive, I guess, things that you can see that show in your mind that we're not falling, that we're fine? Go ahead, please.
So I think if you have that, we're having the conversation, and I think the conversation is where we need to be. And I think, like, if you look at Europe, I think they're just behind in terms of what people are talking about, what's important, and how are we going to get there. I think that the conversation is really maladaptive, but I think that it doesn't need to stay that way. And that's really like it. In terms of how do we shift the conversation, I think strong leadership and compassion and a focus on reducing political polarization can go a long way to leveraging all this political energy in the U.S. To create something far better than the past. And I think what I heard in the two opening statements is kind of we're worse off than we were in the past, and what I'm seeing is a much brighter future.
Give us a little more than that, a much brighter future. Like, I understand that we can get there, perhaps, right? But I don't know. Like, they do make a compelling argument, right? We have large wealth gaps. We are struggling with our polarization. But I will say that we do tend to have more money and more stuff. At least I do. Than I did when I was younger, right? Or than my parents did. I think that when it comes to housing, there's a different story there, right? But when it comes to just purchasing power in general for just living day to day, I don't know. I'm not sure if we are worse off. Go ahead.
Wait, just having more stuff is just marquee materialism, right? And the question is materialism actually a positive on society?
I mean, it doesn't hurt, does it?
I think materialism allows for a lot of people to ignore the reality of a lot of other Americans. You know, even if we do have a lot of purchasing power, we still have like a serious homelessness issue. We still have, you know, a serious issue with like addicts and you know, I think America having so much money should be a sign that we can support our citizens, at least give them like the bare minimum support. And it just doesn't seem like the state is willing to do that. On top of that, they're already planning on making these massive cuts to a lot of, you know, constituent supporting agencies, you know. On top of that, we're seeing this big tax cut that is just going to result in more Americans needing to put more money into the system because billionaires aren't.
Maybe. I just struggle. If America is in decline, where is doing better than America currently? What country in the world right now is better off? Are their citizens better off? The nation is better off? I'm struggling to think of any. China,
I mean, I don't
Well,
think we should be looking
maybe,
there.
oh,
The-
go
There
ahead,
just aren't
please.
there
I
aren't
agree.
nations like America.
Yes, but
I mean, to play devil's advocate, you could point to the UAE, Saudi Arabia. Those are countries that have advanced exponentially in the last 20 years.
hold on.
Now, I'm not supportive of Sharia law, obviously, but I do think there is a kind of another angle of just reverting back to Christian religious cultural roots that have ultimately gotten us to the place that we have been over the last 250 years.
The place that we have been where we're talking about how America is falling and that, you know, there is no future in America because we're losing all of our
Hold
power.
on.
Like
People
I just
are
don't.
less religious
Well,
now.
I hear what you're. I'm just saying, like, you
I
can't
mean-
just say, well, Christianity will save us because it obviously didn't fucking save us before.
Our country
We
was
had
doing
it.
excellent.
We
Our
still
country
have
was
it.
doing
In
excellent.
fact, some of the biggest people in our nation, the greatest politician, or greatest, the most well-known politicians in our nation are evangelists. They're all Christian of some flavor.
What does that have
So
to do
this
with it?
idea that suddenly America isn't this Christian nation when we still have our strongest political leaders are all Christian and are seemingly going to have Christian values informing their decisions. I just don't know if that's reasonable.
Buckaroo, I mean, the data states itself. People have gotten exponentially less religious over the last 60 years. They've resorted to secularism, which in turn has, I think, loosened the moral fabric of society. It's become less focused on the family unit. Less people are having kids.
Why is it less focused on the family unit? Do you think it has to do with the amount of work that the average American is expected to do every day? Do you think it has to do with the fact that like families aren't being supported by their state in the first place? Or do you think all of this is just because people have decided not to be Christian? Like, I just think it's ridiculous to assume that it's Christian values that are going to be the savior.
There are
and
a lot
that
of
it's
good things that came out of secularization. I think just women joining the workforce more, like greatly increased quality of life. And what I think we should be looking at is what does a future look like that has never existed, where we are attacking political polarization, where making it so that there's tech elitists, there's tech libertarians that are saying AI and the people that control AI will shepherd the blind sheep, and then you have, I think, liberal elitists that have said, okay, conservatives have abandoned academia and are now like idiots, they're stupid, they have no rigorous foundation, and therefore it's conservatism that is stupid rather than just you're not in good faith engaging with conservative ideas, which have been shown to be significantly genetic and around where you kind of place your empathy.
You're saying
And if we talk about
conservatism is
these
genetic?
things, yeah, it's like 30% genetic.
Can you
Conservatism and
elaborate on
liberalism.
that, please?
Yeah, what?
That
I just know.
you are genetically some people, not some people, that about 30% of where you place your empathy, either parochially, like within your family unit, within things that are closer to you, versus empathy toward people that are further away from you, that is kind of genetically, or there's a
It
strong
might be
case to be made that
hereditary,
that's
but
genetic.
there's no conservative gene. I mean, that is just
Well,
No,
I think his
they did
point
twin
is that
studies. They did twin studies
conservatism.
and showed that there
Yeah.
is a gene. There's something that is not upbringing that makes people more empathetic toward their family, toward their closer social circle. And then there's also genes that make people more empathetic to people further away from them. And that, like, both things are obviously important. Like, if you're just only focused on people further away from you, you're going to end up, like, you're burning yourself out, like giving too much of yourself away and then not taking care of yourself. But if you're too focused on things that are right next to you, you're going to miss opportunities. You're not going to, you're going to lose out on diversity of thought and, new meritocratic ways of doing things that you just wouldn't have access to if you only focus on what's right next to you.
Okay, this might be a bit of a rabbit
Oh.
hole that I don't want to go down quite yet, but I do want to give a chance for Mooncake, who just got
Hi.
here, to kind of
Sorry
introduce
about that, Vic.
herself. You're fine. You told me you would be late, so that's okay. We're talking about the downfall of America, gang. Are we in it? Ivory Fool says no, that there's a bright future ahead if we can only grasp it. Everyone else seems to think we are. Me personally,
Shout out to Ivory Fool for that, though.
Yeah. Me personally, I don't think we are. I think that there's risk. I think that we have a period of trouble coming up that we're going to have to get through. But I think that America is stronger today and will be stronger for this struggle if we don't self-destruct. But Mooncake, tell us your thoughts. You're the one who
Okay.
actually gave us the idea for the panel, so go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So once again, sorry about being late. But yeah, I'll jump right into it. I'll make it kind of quick. So basically, based on the current political stability, economic circumstances, geopolitical relations, leadership, influence, social culture, I think American imperialism, greatness, influence, whatever you want to call it, is quickly declining. So I use the word downfall and declining like interchangeably. Just to start, so I put notes on my screen for this one. I think in general, political polarization has like changed healthy debate into like a standoff or standstill, if you will. I think that it's nearly impossible to find like bipartisanship or an agreement of any terms because of this. As you can see, like in Congress, for example, I think they were just literally at a standstill. And then also, I think something I'm going to talk about later is economic inequality has kind of changed the American dream, where you could kind of build yourself up, but now we're seeing that widening gap, which I think is also leading to the downfall of America in a lot of ways. I also think it's causing like a casual tension among the different classes. In addition, I think people have also lost trust in institutions. So this is regarding science, health, academia. And as this happens, I think in general, like morale will continue to plummet. Same with innovation, economics. Another thing I want to talk about just kind of later, just to make this intro not too long, is rising powers like China. As you can see, I think comparing nominal GDP, they're kind of reaching the same place as America. And I think for America as a country, that should be concerning. Manufacturing, innovation, tech, Huawei, for example, we're kind of seeing them change the landscape of the new norms. I know people don't really care about BRICS, but I think BRICS is important and an actual issue to talk about. I know the American dollar is still kind of the reserve of most countries, but I think over time that could reasonably change. Also, yeah, I already mentioned that. And the last thing I'm going to say, I guess, for my intro is if we don't face this reality with real concern, urgency, and honesty, we won't just be discussing the downfall of America, but in some ways, America won't be relevant at all. And they will have a lack of influence on any country. So yeah, that's kind of it to start.
No, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. So how do we square that away, right, with the very real fact that the American military might is still, if not the strongest, yeah, no, I'm not going to even say it. I think that the American military is just the military, the force to be reckoned with. We can project power where we like, how we like, when we like. Can a nation fall when it has the most powerful military in the world?
I guess
I mean, it's
my
crumbling
question,
from within.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
I mean,
One at a time.
Sorry.
Oh.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say economically, yes. If we're seeing the worth of the American dollar continue to go down and we are, we're seeing investors pull all of their stocks in the S&P 500. I think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, just because billionaires are going to have just because the richest of the rich are going to be able to support themselves doesn't mean that the people at the bottom of the economic ladder are going to be able to survive. And I think that's going to increase tensions because realistically, I think the people who are the most upset about this are going to be the ones who are most economically affected.
I would take a different position. I think if we look at historically, the people who win wars are typically those who come from a country with the strongest industrial base within their country to support the weaponry and everything else that comes with an army. And over the last 30, 40 years, if not more, we've basically seen the industrial base of the United States get hollowed out. Offshore to China and other nations, and that's ultimately what worries me. So as these other countries continue to build up their industrial bases, and as we continue to lose ours, the question is how sustainable is our military might in the long run if other countries actually now have a base where they can create an extremely lethal military based off of that industrial base.
Okay, Visora's here with us.
What's up, guys? Sorry, I didn't realize that I'm late. Hello. Nice to meet
Don't worry,
everybody.
I was late too.
Yeah, it's okay. It's been a day. It's been a day, gang. But we're talking about the downfall of America right now. And if it's happening, how we can prevent it, how we can turn it around, what we can do. There does seem to be mostly consensus that America is in a rough spot right now, right? Mooncake listed a whole host of issues. New York Shade here talked about the loosening industrial base that we have in America and the growing industrial base that other countries are having. How do we fix this, gang? Let's go there first, and I'll give it to you first, Visora, since you're here. Assuming you agree that
So-
America's downfall is in its kind of late stages, is it fixable? Can we turn this around, and how? Go ahead.
So, my view on this is that America as a country, as a government, as a socio-political system, cooked. Like, I mean, so cooked that we are now the overcooked steak of the global dinner party, right? That's not going to come back. But Americans are not cooked. Not entirely. Some of us kind of are. The issue being, to me, is the belief and engagement with reality. If you want Americans to not be cooked, we have to first accept like real things are real and engage with them accordingly. The cognitive dissonance, the inability to regulate emotional discomfort, all of these things are what are the like key between all of the problems that we see and the behaviors that we exhibit that cause them. From school shootings to gulags to like plane crashes, all of that is tied into both the profit motive and the fact that people just don't engage with reality. If you want to fix this, community engagement, go outside, talk to your neighbors, make friends outside, spend more time offline, build community support systems. Like I was just telling my chat, after the USSR fell, the Russians survived by creating like a massive bartering network, basically like a virtual economy to fill the void. During the Great Depression, we had hundreds of co-ops where people lived and shared things. Go build a like community garden. Go knock on some doors in your neighborhood and get some money together. Find an empty lot, buy it, build some infrastructure to grow some food so you don't starve to death. That is your resistance, and your resilience emotionally is required for it. That's the whole key, is just emotional resilience.
What do we
Wait.
think about that, gang?
I-
Saving America through community gardens. Do we think that this is a way forward?
I mean, I think it's
I-
just more nostalgia baiting from the left instead of the right.
Can you
I personally think.
go ahead?
I was just gonna say, I think the having some sort of resilience, like mental resilience, is necessary. That's actually a point I've discussed with a friend recently, because not because I think we need to build community gardens, although I do agree community gardens do slap. I think because we're in a rough time, it's going to get rougher, and frankly, we all have to be able to handle our shit, and not let a lot of the like Visora pointed out, not let a lot of the misinformation get to us, not just play the team's game, because
Be
we're all
okay,
going to be
right?
challenged on our political positions. We're literally all of us are going to be challenged on that.
Right now, we're
So
all just trying to be okay. We're all just trying to figure out how to live in this new world. You have emotions, right? It's not about the gardens. The
And we don't
gardens is
need
well,
to
I just
we
I
don't
just
need
don't know
to
if I
clutch
agree
pearls,
completely,
though.
because there are a lot
It's
of
just
people who are spending their time just like going to work, going home, making meals for their family. So, like, I agree,
this
there are a
is
lot
the
of people that are
isolated
online.
people.
There are a lot of people who are getting like misled, but I wouldn't say that. I would say that most people just aren't informed. I wouldn't even say that they're all living in some other reality. I would say they're fucking working like 8 to 12 hours a day. They're coming home and they're making food for their kids. They're sleeping, they're waking up, they're doing it again. They get like 2 pieces of news every day. They're not spending
Systems
hours
I
that
upon
are
disagree
hours
with
on
built
that
to
too.
TikTok.
to make you like this, to give you that necessity of isolation and escapism. Because all of these people, the ones you described, they don't look at what's going on outside. You're right. They get like an hour a day to relax, and they watch a movie or they play a game. That's the escapism and the isolation. That then leads into the resentment.
Okay, I
Which
Though,
want to give it to
well,
Mooncake, and then I want to get to Ivory. Mooncake
no,
and then Ivory.
I
Go
do
ahead.
think those like points are important. I think community is always important. However, if I like compare it to like 50, 60 years ago, I mean, people were still doing like crazy hours and still investing like in their economy, their military, their social construct, like everything to that point. However, I think the most important thing here is especially America, reinvesting back in education and innovation. And I think that's just where they're losing. I don't think they're paying enough attention to the fact that they're falling quite behind when it comes to education numbers, health numbers. It's not even comparable to European countries anymore, Asian countries. I forget what number they are now for reading levels. They're quite low than compared
it's
to where they were.
65% of
Yeah,
Americans can't read above a
that's
sixth grade level.
that's not
Yeah.
good. You have a major issue there, and I think that's also going to play a big role in America's decline. And I think if you don't hit those points first, you can't build back a proper country, a proper economy. You can't fix these issues.
So
I
this is
do.
You can
this is
do that
not
from the
an
top down,
American
though.
decline. This is a worldwide decline.
That is a
This
global
No,
thing too. Yeah.
this
Well, let
this
Ivory
is
go. Go ahead.
but it's not
Sure.
just like education. It's the fact that the entire world is struggling with globalization and liberalism and
Capitalism.
and capitalism, and understanding how all these things intersect, and climate change, and like what is our purpose. The entire world is struggling with this, and America is the one talking about it. America is the one that has we have, like, that's our strength, that
when
we're
you say
actually
struggling,
engaged.
At making it worse, yeah. If
Well, it's not
if
making
you
it worse.
think
Like,
that's
you can't, if you
What-
don't talk about it, then you can't do anything
we are
about it.
actively
struggling.
talking about it
We
in the
talk
way
about
that makes
literally
it
fucking
worse.
everything.
Like
I
RFK.
Yeah, but
disagree.
you're saying
America
No,
talks about
that's
it
why
in
I'm
so
saying.
many different
Okay,
ways.
okay. One at a time. One at a
Really
time.
quickly.
Right, one at a
People can
time.
talk and say a lot of things, right? They say a lot of shit. But
I'm
what do they
saying Europeans
actually
are not
do?
talking about it.
No, they are not talking about climate change right now because they're more worried about getting killed by Russia, which America is helping to do.
Most
America at
Europeans
the
are not
same
worried
time
about
is
getting killed by
talking about
Russia.
climate change
Russia can't even
and then
take Ukraine.
stepping on the gas to make it worse. Then, like,
I'm talking about
it is
culture war
all
here, not.
the culture
But girl,
war is a shadow war for what they're actually doing. It is always why do you always hear about migrants whenever, I don't know, people are having rough economic times? And nobody gives a shit about migrants when the economy's doing well for the working class. Your wages don't go up, but everyone else had a great economy under Biden. So you think that the economy was shit the last 4 years when it was actually soaring. It's just you didn't feel any of it because you're not already rich.
The economy isn't the thing that makes people happy necessarily. Like,
No, of course not.
there's lots more than materialism, right? I think that is important
but
to
having
people.
a good economy can make people happier. Like that's just
Like,
People
it's a
focus
there's a
on-
baseline level of happiness that most Americans already achieve. And it's and we're having the discussion on the culture war is like we're open to it. We just need
What is the
to.
culture war now? What is it now? Can you explain that to me?
The biggest thing
What's
is
happening in this chat right now, brother?
the biggest problem
Sister.
and the biggest driver of polarization is conservatives leaving academia to go and invest in small businesses.
Don't believe in science.
No,
We're-
Okay, that's
because
just insane.
they went to business. That's where the conservatives went instead of
That's the
academia.
question.
And so
Sure.
and
Also,
it's a
there are
mistake to say
conservative
that conservatives are
scientists.
stupid.
Let Ivory finish, and then
Sorry.
Mooncake
Sorry.
can ask her
Sorry.
question. Are you
Okay.
done, Ivory?
Well, so it's a mistake to think that conservatives are stupid, and I think I also want to reject this idea that just because people can't articulate something or that they're not articulating something does not mean that they're not seeing it. Does not mean that they're not feeling
Yeah,
it.
I don't think they're stupid.
Beautifully put.
I don't
No,
think they're stupid.
no. But like we were talking earlier about how people are always working. They have no time. I don't think that's true. I think people are seeing and feeling and understanding the culture war, and they're understanding what is their meaning in the world, and they're thinking about that. But they're not thinking
So-
with thought, like with
This is all
with
meaningless
words.
Can I
bullshit.
clarify
You
my
think you're thinking,
position
but you're not
there?
thinking.
Well, Mooncake.
No, I'm
wants
I know we're
to-
going to mooncakes. I just
Yeah.
want to clarify my position at some point.
That's fine. Mooncake, go ahead.
No, I just want clarification by what you mean by conservatives are leaving, like academia, and the way that conservatives have never really been a large part of academia in the first place. Like I think like 60 years ago, it was maybe at 12% of academia were actually conservatives. I don't know
it
what
was
the number
it was at 30%. 30% of professors were conservative in the 80s, and so like
no,
it's now
in the
it's now
80s?
10%. Yep, it
I-
really wasn't that long ago that conservatives were a big part of academia, and it mostly happened because we left the gold standard. The economy dramatically improved.
Neoliberalism.
Yeah, and
was the word you're looking
neoliberalism like lifted
No, I just
many like
fact-checked that. It
neoliberalism
wasn't
was
30%
fantastic.
in the 80s. If unless you're referencing, however, it was 12% in 1999, down from 27% in 1969. Is that like sorry what we're referencing? I like to be particular on those.
Which like
You guys want to send
like
it to the
professors?
chat? Send to the
Yeah,
chat
I'll send
what
it to the
you're
chat.
referencing.
Just
Yeah, I'll
We're
find
going
my
back
reference
to-
too real quick.
I can't believe I just heard the words neoliberalism was amazing.
Yeah, it was fantastic. But I mean, just like there's plenty of things that were fantastic. Like, when empires first were established, that was fantastic
when you
compared
first
to the
shoot
alternative.
up heroin, I'm sure that feels fantastic. But
True. I've heard that
I
from
think
every
that's the
person I know who's
comparison.
tried heroin.
yeah, that's
They
the
all say-
comparison to me.
Top tier. But don't try
Yeah.
it. Sorry,
I mean,
I'm not
neoliberalism
promoting the
made
use of heroin.
predictions
That's
about
that's my
economics.
view of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism was built by demons like fucking Milton Friedman, who literally built this on torture of people, specifically based on the idea of the free market can only exist if nothing ever is touching any of the market influence, except that never works unless we put in
What?
a Jewish government and I don't know, start imprisoning people and beating the shit out
What?
of protesters.
Wait,
and
what about
Okay, I
imprisoning
will
people?
say,
Chile,
I
in
do love
Argentina,
Visora's
in
energy.
Iraq.
Okay,
Like,
What
we've
that has
done
nothing to do with
this.
neoliberalism.
but
It's literally directly caused by it. It one to one. Go read the shock doctrine, my guy. It's like a book from 2009. Go read the book.
But how is that caused by neoliberalism, not just imperialism?
Because neoliberalism and do you know what neoliberalism is? Can you define the word for me?
It's using liberal ideas and applying them and applying them with economic theory.
In an imperial fashion. That's like the
no, it's like you
well,
can
I mean,
be
the current
neoliberal in your own
economic theory
country.
of America exists, does it not? So if you're going to apply anything to an economic theory that already exists, then it would probably have influence from that economic theory, like capitalism. Like
The
if you're taking
entire
liberal ideas
idea-
and then applying capitalism, you're
Yeah,
going to
that's
see.
what neoliberalism is.
Well, no, I agree.
neoliberalism
That's
is
what I'm saying,
laissez-faire
though.
economics. It's a laissez-faire economics.
Yes,
that was
and laissez-faire
implemented
economics
over-
really worked in the 80s.
Except it only works when you then also install a dictator government to
What?
suppress the. We did go
Did
look
we
up
install a
We are
dictator
not
government in
under
the 80s?
dictatorship.
What?
Yes,
I just want
we did this in
to add.
the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. We literally
No.
did this
In
exact
America.
No,
in
I'm
America
talking
was
about
neoliberal.
America did this to other countries in South America, and we benefited from it. Do you
We really
understand
didn't.
how
It
like
backfired
True,
dramatically.
and yet we still be shitting. Okay,
We
so I just
tried.
want to
Like,
say, I do think
It's
one good
never-
thing to recognize at least is as Americans, I think we all are Americans. I'm making an assumption. As
I'm
Americans,
Sorry.
as Americans and a Canadian, we actually benefit from living. We are lucky. Okay, there are other places where we could live. There are other nations that don't have it as good. Okay, we have better access to education and healthcare and just general rights than a lot of other places. So before we go down this path of America's falling, like, yes, there are
we're
complaints
literally
that I
throwing
have.
people
If you
into
let me finish
gulags.
my fucking point, if you let me finish my
No,
fucking point, I
because
hear you. But
you're literally lying. You just said we have easy access to healthcare as Americans. Really?
Is that what I
Yeah.
said? I said we have
Compared to
better
most of
access
the
to
world?
healthcare than a lot of other countries.
Yeah, that's
okay?
a literal
And when
lie.
it comes to, can you shut the fuck up for
Hold
5
on.
seconds and let me finish my fucking
fuck,
point? I was
you're
literally
lying to
going to
me.
defend
You're
you.
lying to
You
me.
Hold on.
bitch.
Okay,
But you're
stop. Both of
wrong.
you. Calm down. Calm down. We're gonna
I-
take this
I
one at a time.
stopped.
Buckaroo. We're gonna take this one at a time. Okay. Let
Let me
Buckaroo
finish my point.
finish, and then once she's finished, I'll let you respond, Visora. Is that cool? That's what we're gonna do.
Sure.
Buckaroo, finish your point. Land the plane. Then we're gonna go to Visora. Otherwise, we can't hear anyone say anything. Go ahead.
There are tons of complaints I have about America. That's literally what she interrupted me saying. I have tons of complaints about America as it treats its own constituents, as it treats its own citizens and immigrants, and how it treats other countries. Okay, there are issues in America. There are issues with how America treats a lot of other nations, but that does not mean that we're like all living on the streets and that we're all like dying. Like, I hear you when you're making these complaints about what America is doing, but this is actually an issue I have as a leftist with other leftists, that you can't pretend like America isn't serving us in some way. There are a lot of people who benefit from being in America that they could not benefit from in any other nation in the
I
same
don't
way.
live in America,
Okay.
to be fair.
Okay, let's give it to Visora. Let Visora
Okay, well, you're
go, and then we'll
arguing
get
about
other people
America,
up.
so.
No, I
understand.
know. I'm American, but I'm not living in America. I left the United States in 2018. I live in Australia now, where,
Nice.
it's not. We have our own issues.
It's little
look,
America.
It is little America. Literally, our election is a microcosm of the American election right now.
Yeah,
But
Australians
what
don't
I
like
will
it when
say,
it's
what I will say
Good.
in regards to America is cooked. Right now, most people are putting layers of positivity, sanity, and peace, just painting that shit over the internal crash out that's happening every day. All right, 1 in 6 Americans right now believes in QAnon. People do not engage with the fact that your water safety is gone. They put shit in the water. There is metals in the water. Just recently, they found more metals, more radioactive components and shit in the water. American tap water. It's like a extreme sports drink now. On top of that, food safety gone. FDA doesn't care. They're not going to make your food safe. We can't even sell American grown farm products to other countries because they're just not safe. Most of them, we do, but
Well,
there's
it's
exceptions.
really just about
Things like beef,
Well,
corn.
regulations aren't
Buckaroo,
inherently.
you got hold on,
Look,
Buckaroo, you gotta
sorry,
let
you're
Visora
right. You're
finish.
right.
On
Buckaroo,
top of
you gotta
that,
let Visora finish,
medicine
please.
safety. Medicine safety is out the window. We have no FDA, which means that we have no one checking to see that the drugs are real. For example, we got rid of that for vitamins back in the 80s, and there was no regulation over vitamins, and it resulted in you could go buy multivitamins off a store shelf and they have literally nothing that is advertised in them, and it's not illegal because no one checks. We have safety. Where's the safety here? We've abolished people's rights already. We've changed the laws. They're ignoring institutions. They're ignoring the Supreme Court. We're kidnapping Americans. Not a single person's been deported because deportation requires a court, a jury, a law, a lawyer. No, we're just kidnapping folks, throwing them into gulags. By the way, where are the women? Because I've seen a lot of the men getting arrested and sent by ICE and sent to the gulag. Where are the women? I haven't
Women
seen
get
any
deported all the
women in
fucking
the
time.
big prisons that
Clear,
we
women
keep
do
them
get
in.
deported a lot.
No, I know
Women
they
also
do.
get
I'm
deported.
asking. First of all, no one's being deported Because
Drew, we need some-
deportation means a court. You've done something.
Okay.
We don't have due process.
I do got to get other people in here. There's been other people who want to talk today, and we got to give them a chance. I want to give the mic to.
I gotta pee anyway.
You're fine. I want to give the mic. Well, maybe you want to address your points. Oh God. Let's give it to New York Shade, and then we'll give it to Ivory Fool, and then we'll give it to Mooncake. That's the order we're gonna go in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think really we're addressing any of the real underlying material problems that have gotten us to this point. There's this theory I've been thinking about the past couple of days where, there's a study that McKinsey came out with in 2022 that today 36% of all U.S. workers are either contractors, freelancers, or gig economy workers. And we see that as basically a replacement to the offshored industrial jobs that we've had for really decades coming into the modern era. And what that means is that an incredible amount, over a third of Americans, are dealing with extremely unstable, volatile incomes. They have very limited benefits. They don't have access to health care from an employer. They're not building a nest egg through 401ks and pensions. It is just way too volatile. So we came from this era where we had a very strong industrial base where, people were working for factories, but they were able to build a nest egg. They were able to sustain a household off of one income. And because all of those jobs have offshored, it's essentially eviscerated our middle class. And it's been replaced by this gig economy, which, by the way, is expected to be 50% of all U.S. workers in the next 10 years. That is just way too unstable to really be able to maintain a middle class. And, I think there's a lot of very good arguments for tariffs. I think I'm starting to take some issue with the way Trump is rolling them out. I think it's been exceptionally chaotic and not very streamlined. But this is the deep-rooted problem, in my view, of the current American economy. We need to find a way to get a sustainable middle class back, and this reliance on the gig economy is not sustainable in that sense at all.
Okay, Ivory, what do you got for us? Lots been said. You could jump in wherever, right?
Yeah, I might pass it because I have to think about how to respond.
That's fine. Mooncake, go ahead.
No, I kind of feel like, oh, sorry, I'm just gonna get his name really quick. New York Shade kind of spoke to kind of what I was saying earlier, just in regard to the economic inequality. And here's the thing: I don't think there's a problem with bringing back manufacturing to America. I would actually promote that. Something that he also mentioned was the tariffs. I think if a lot of people take issue with, only because I think it is doing more harm. But I think you can also preach bringing back manufacturing in that innovation aspect. I think less people now, and it kind of speaks to, this is another topic, but the cost of living and how it's actually affecting Americans in the long run, is that because there's not many people, I think, creating their own companies, creating or having R&D, or America kind of contributing to these things, there is that lack where people aren't making as much money as they used to. I kind of tell people all the time, the American dream was great after the Second World War, for I would say 30 years after that, but then something happened, right? Something happened where there was a breakdown. In my eyes, I don't know. Sorry, it
was neoliberalism. Is the answer? Sorry, I meant to mute my mic and I misclicked that.
I don't. Yeah, I was that's what.
Yeah, I can explain it if you want.
No, at least in my eyes, I would say it comes down to the billionaire class. The idea that you can kind of use workers how you want, abuse them how you want, and also, I'm just going to say, making money through, honestly, no, still billionaires, but any means possible. So that kind of comes down to landlords. It comes down to jobs where you don't have to do much to make that money, if that makes sense. So you're not really investing into the actual market. I don't know another way to put that.
The service economy, like streaming,
perhaps?
No, rent seeking.
No. Yeah,
Just
but for example, if you have one millionaire who buys 10 properties, and then, oh great, they're making money off those 10 properties, but how are you actually contributing to the economy? That's not like a company where you're creating real jobs. You're just making money for yourself. So I think that's where I kind of take issue.
We measure job creation. That's gone up a lot.
No, that's not a job though. CEOs don't actually
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not saying that's a job, but I'm saying you can't point to one example and say that's what's happening everywhere. We measure.
That's part of the issue. I'm saying that's also a big part of the issue. Is what I'm saying, especially with cost of living and people not having money anymore. For example, to rent places. I think in some places, I'm just going to use New York as obviously it's
disposable income has been going up.
Crazy example.
Hold on. I have a stat I want to throw in here.
In the middle class. In the middle class,
generally.
I personally think
40 to 60% of homeless people are employed. I just want everyone to know that right off the bat.
Yeah,
in
we know that.
America.
So a part
Okay,
of my
but the
issue
homeless,
with
like,
this
there's also like
discussion,
very few homeless people in America.
There's
yeah,
literally like
I think
700,000.
I think Ivory is making some really good points. Like, as much as we want to talk about all the ways that Americans aren't being supported and like don't have enough money, I do think we live in a nation of convenience. We live in a nation of comfort. We have access, like he said, to disposable income. We have access to food and water that a lot of other nations don't. Now, to be clear, that's not true for every single American. And I think that is really the biggest issue to me is the economic inequality, because people like us, all of us have, fucking computers that we can interact with. We have the time in our day to sit down and have a debate online. Okay. That, I would argue, already proves that all of us are in a well enough position to recognize that there are benefits from living in America that I personally might not have if I lived in, let's say, Palestine, where people are actually dying and starving and don't have access to water or food. So I think
Who's doing
it
that?
is.
I
think it
swear
is
to God, if we
important
turn this into
to
Israel-Palestine debate,
No,
recognize.
we're not.
okay.
Sorry, I couldn't help
Please,
myself
let's-
just by
Well,
asking.
look, Visora, I'm not talking about who's good and bad, and
I
like
didn't
whether
say
there are
that.
tons of issues that connect. I mean, but it feels like every time somebody's like, "Well, Americans have this," you're like, "No,
Americans are
Americans
coddled and
don't
treated
have
right.
that."
Yes,
Yes, they
Americans
are.
are coddled.
And why are they coddled? Because they live in such a great nation that affords them so many conveniences and comforts above other places. Great nation.
No, it's because the
quotation
media
marks.
What does
tells
Americans being
people this
coddled mean? I
enough
don't
that they believe
understand.
it.
But
As in, you've never suffered enough that you can't understand and conceptualize what the rest of the world is looking at.
aren't
and
you
seeing in
literally
America
just
right now.
talking about how many homeless people there are in America? Weren't you literally
Yeah.
just jaw dropped at him saying
Yeah.
that there aren't as many homeless people in America as there are other places, and now you're saying that actually
You know
Americans
that
aren't
things are
suffering enough?
relative.
Look,
Yes, Americans are not
things are
suffering enough,
relative.
but there is a group
Do you
of
hear the
people that
words
are
coming out of my?
suffering. Do you hear yourself?
Did she hear
Are
the
you
words
even
coming out of my
fucking
mouth?
thinking? Guys, pay
Did she
attention.
hear what I
Pay the
said
fuck
5 minutes
attention.
ago?
We are literally killing people. We have no government. We have no laws
listening
to
at
protect
all?
you. No, I'm not listening to you because you are just so
You are
stupid.
literally
You
saying what I just said.
You
I just
think
talked about how economic
and you
inequality
can't
is the
connect
problem.
that.
How
I
people
agree with
starving on the
you.
streets is a problem. Then what?
I agree with you,
You're
but
so.
you can't connect
You
that
just
to the
called
next
me
step.
stupid. Girl.
You are
Okay.
stupid because you can't connect it to the next step. Why can't you connect it? Yes, we have
What
benefits.
step? We're talking about America, you dumb bitch.
Okay, calm down.
I'm literally talking. Why do you have to be so angry and rage at this? I'm talking about America. You laid out exactly what the economic issues are and how to connect them to the other issues that are causing them.
Talking about
You are being directed to pay attention
Girl,
at
open your
one
fucking
specific
ears.
thing.
I swear to God, if you hear any
Are
fucking
you
words out of my mouth,
literally
you
gonna,
would
like,
know that I
can I mute
just
you?
said this.
Hold on.
I literally just
I
talked
muted her.
about this,
Thank God.
and you
That's
interrupted me to bitch at
much
me
better.
about how I'm not
Much
saying
better.
any of it.
I need you to understand right now that yes, we have these economic
actually
issues.
just gonna leave
yes,
if she
other
does this to me.
places
What are
have
we
not
it
even
doing
kidding.
here?
I'm going
but
to
we are
leave if she's
making
doing
these
this.
economic issues.
You muted
we are
me to just do this.
manufacturing them on purpose. We are causing
deafening until
economic
she's
downturn
done.
everywhere
Wick,
else in the
signal
world.
when you're ready.
We
I'm
are
deafening.
causing climate change to get worse everywhere else in the world. We are talking about invading foreign countries. We are starting like shit, like beef with countries that we haven't had beef with. We are destroying global, allies.
That's not neoliberalism doing that,
just
though,
real
right?
quick.
No,
just real quick,
neoliberalism is dead.
Okay, look. Okay. I understand that you guys have heat, and I don't know what's going on right now. I'm not sure why you're fighting exactly, but we can't have panelists muting each other.
Literally
we can't
the
just
left
do
eating
that.
the left.
It makes it really hard to have a conversation,
couldn't
and I
get
do
a
want to
word
have a
out.
conversation. Right?
You've gotten so many fucking words out.
Okay.
Honestly, Wick, like I might just be out right now. Like this conversation is not hitting the vibes for me.
It's not hitting the. Oh my
I'll-
god.
I'm not mad or anything. It's just I don't know that I can
Girl, you were yelling. Don't lie.
engage in this.
You
without
can't engage. You choose
getting
not to
mad.
recognize the reality of Americans. You choose not to recognize
I
the
want to
reality
give. Hold on,
you live
hold on,
in.
all of you. I want to give the mic to someone else for a minute. Maybe get us back on track. Okay. I don't know. You guys like oil and fucking water. I don't know why. Let's give it to Mooncake. She's
Because
been trying
she's
to
an
get
ignorant
in.
leftist.
Mooncake, use your sweet personality
And
and save
chooses to
this.
be.
Save us. Okay.
I don't know what to say. Well, my response initially, because I'm sorry, I did check out a little bit there just because I didn't exactly know what was happening. But when Ivory mentioned the thing regarding that people have more disposable income, I don't think that will take away from the fact that people are still feeling like the economic pressures. So even though you still have more disposable income, I think we still have to acknowledge the rising costs in the market that we're seeing. So people are still being affected quite a bit regarding, like I said, rental increases, price of groceries, childcare, for example, things of that nature. So I don't know what you're trying to say there.
So, I mean, you were saying that like it's because of billionaires that things are bad. I
It
don't,
has an impact.
I want to know more about what you mean because I don't think your position is quite so, no, like I think your position is more nuanced, right? So, um,
Mm, When
yeah,
I guess what I mean when I say that like billionaires have taken a toll, I just mean regarding the impact on workers. So for example, outsourcing work now to foreign countries where they know they can get a lot of cheap labor instead of like keeping that also in America. Not paying people what they should probably be paid in America as well. They're keeping people at a certain level while they still make a shit ton of money. And billionaires, honestly, they can create more jobs, which is great, right? Invest in more
yeah, they've
companies.
created more jobs and
But
increased people's income,
but
increased their quality of life.
I don't know if I'd say increase their quality of life because if you're also not paying somebody enough, how are you increasing their quality of life when like costs are still rising? So I think like some
Well, it's
Amazon workers
like it's adjusted for inflation that real disposable income is going up.
but it
But
doesn't
so is debt.
yes, exactly. Thank you. That is also still increasing. I think that has a big impact regarding the disposable income. So either way, I don't think we can just look at disposable income and be like, oh well, they're making more money when we have to consider other factors.
Wait, disposable income isn't no, wait, well, because it's
It's
like
not rent. It's
that's what
not.
you get.
It's
That's
not
what you get to
necessities.
pay after you've handled all of your debts and rents and stuff like
When you
that.
think
That's
about
I
what
don't think
like,
that's true.
no,
I don't think
that's
that's
if your
true.
fixed expenses. But if you think about
I
variable
can check.
expenses, yeah, I think that's just fixed expenses. But I could.
Well, it's also a lot of people just like aren't very good at handling their debt in the first place. Most people are just paying like the lowest payment they can. They're not actually paying off their debt in the first place. That's why so many people are in debt for so long and why they have like so much money that they owe to these places.
I think it's hard
Partially
though.
because they can't afford the debt.
Okay,
Because I
just
do
for my
know. Oh,
panels
sorry.
just for the panel's edification, the definition of a disposable income, at least through the Oxford Dictionary, is this: it's the income remaining after deduction of taxes and other mandatory charges available to be spent or saved as one wishes.
Yeah, so fixed expenses, basically. So what you
It
know you're
doesn't
going to pay
include
every
that.
month.
I don't think anybody's been able to contend with the point that I've been making from the very beginning is that if more workers were exposed to the equity market, I mean, look, how do billionaires get rich and continue to get richer? It's because of exposure to equity markets. And what I said from the very beginning is that nearly 50% of all US workers have zero exposure to the equity markets and they have no retirement plans, no 401ks, no pensions. If they have exposure to the equity markets, they get more wealthy alongside the billionaires. And again, all of these jobs that were in our industrial base that have since been offshored have been replaced by these contract freelancing gig economy jobs that do not require provide any benefits, any pensions, any exposure to the equity markets
Or
through
workers' rights.
401ks or workers' rights. I agree with that, and that is what is hollowing out the middle class. There needs to be a reversion back to stability of people working for companies for a very long time on a stable wage that increases slightly over time, where the companies are matching a 401k contribution and letting these workers expose themselves to the equity markets, which are making the billionaires rich to begin with. The billionaire problem isn't a problem as long as the workers have this a similar amount of exposure.
Wait, why is gig
I mean, I'm
economy
not.
and workers investing in the stock market mutually exclusive? That doesn't seem to follow.
What do you mean?
Like if there's a worker working in a gig economy that they can invest their extra income into the stock market.
But they don't.
Well, wasn't a part of his
that's
point
not because
also
they're in the
about
gig economy. That's because of something else.
Buckaroo. Hold on, Buckaroo. I want to give a chance to Visora to get back in here.
Like I was just gonna say, like equity market exposure is not what's gonna save us. I think billionaires alone should just be illegal. I don't think you should be. I think first of all, I think it makes you mentally ill after you gain that much money. But secondly, I don't think it should be legal to be a billionaire. Period. I think if you want to fix the middle class, you're not going to get that. Not in the next 4 years, not in the next 8. You want to know what the current plan is for the manufacturing jobs that are being brought back? It's to give them to robots. They're going to replace all of your jobs.
Well, not completely.
With
there are
robots.
some manufacturing jobs that can't be replaced by robots.
For now, but for now, but as you build more robotics and as we research it, like exponentially gets better. And so within 5 years, more of your jobs will be replaced by robots. This is what we've seen in every technological advancement. It's pretty close with AI as well. They're really trying hard for AGI. But I mean,
what is your point?
Software developers are. My point is that you're not going to make any of these changes that you're talking about because you're trying to work in a system that is still trying to fuck you. Like the system currently right now is trying to fuck you and you're expecting it to do something nice.
I will disagree though with I don't think making billionaires illegal is going to help in the long term. I think if we're talking about real impact, I would think raising taxes on the billionaire class is the best way to go about it. Because I don't think people are going to go with just making it illegal
97%.
That's going to
raising taxes.
Oh, that's crazy. But having like a sort of wealth tax, for example, in Canada, there is a wealth tax. When you do make a certain amount of money, we do wealth tax on if you purchase a certain car, like over $250,000. So I think increasing a wealth tax and distributing that to
Canada's a great example of a shining economy right now.
Didn't we already all agree that materialism isn't a viable like philosophy for society moving forward, right?
Yes.
We all agree kind of on that.
This is why I personally think what we need to do is to support the most vulnerable communities in America. I think that is the first step to actually making America a great nation, is actually giving a fuck about all of the Americans, not just the ones who make the most money. So
But
I think
what does giving a fuck about them mean? Does that mean their material conditions?
So I think one of the best ways to resolve this would to be target things like homelessness, target things like food insecurity, target. I actually liked the point, I believe Mooncakes made it, about education. I think the education system is easily one of the most useful tools that we are basically just hanging out to dry. We're not considering it, This is
to what end?
To what end? I think it can give people skills that they can use in their future lives. I think it gives them, workable skills, and it also gives them life skills. I believe.
That sounds like you're pointing to people making a good income and having good material conditions. But we have to square away the fact that we all agree that materialism is not a viable philosophy forward.
I don't know if that's true.
I don't want to go down I have like so many obnoxious opinions about education. I could honestly go on for hours upon hours.
Let's not.
So I don't want to dive too deeply into it. Yeah. But I think there are systems in place now that we could utilize to our benefit that we don't. And I also think if we sought out supporting the most vulnerable communities in America, that we would see everybody benefit from this.
But if it's all only to increase people's material conditions, then we're not solving the underlying problem that we've all agreed upon.
Well, I believe a part of the issue is the extreme economic inequality.
Yeah, I do want to address this because Ivory, you've said this a couple times, and I don't know if I agree with you. You've said a couple times that materialism won't save us. Materialism won't get us out of this. Materialism isn't what we need to concentrate on. And I think that materialism, while it cannot be the only solution, I think that a society that has more material generally does better than one that has less. So a society that has access to its citizens, or where its citizens has access to more stuff, more purchasing power, more free time, more all of this stuff.
So Wick,
is a thing we need to get to, or a thing we need to increase. Do you disagree?
So here's the thing, though. Like, we can increase our material conditions all we want. We need, like, if we want to build the society of the future, we need that there is a different philosophy that will exist that isn't materialistic, right? Because it's like materialism is
Okay.
is what we have optimized. We've
If
optimized
you
our
want
society around
humanism, is I think
materialism,
where you're
and
trying to go.
clearly it has caused people to feel that something
I
is
think
missing.
You're
So
trying to
Well,
go
this is
towards
this
humanism,
is
right?
why.
no,
Well,
No.
so this is a
I
part of
mean
why
maybe
I'm
I mean
not really trying to talk about like materialism as in like owning fancy things. I'm talking about materialism as in like there are homeless people who don't
Yeah.
have a place to live. They need a place to live. There are people who don't have access, like ready access to the foods that most, I would say, the average American has access to. They deserve that
I mean,
access.
Yeah,
when
I
we're
would say
talking
the
about the
same for
hollowing out
just
of it,
really
when we're
quickly,
talking about the
hold on,
hollowing out of
let
middle
me
this is
America,
add
are
why
those
I'm
people
saying.
hold on,
homeless?
hold on.
Let me
But
add
this is
into
part
her
of why
point
I'm
really quickly.
saying I believe the reduction, like this will reduce income inequality if we at least bring up the standard of living for the average American,
We
which
could
we
do it
can
so
afford as
easily.
a
Are the
nation.
We could do
Republicans
it
that you
so
feel like
easily.
don't have access to?
No, listen, the Ivory Fool. We could make money doing this. There are more empty, vacant houses in the U.S. than there are homeless people.
But this is what
If
I'm
you
saying. It's like
give
making money is
if
not
you
the
just
goal.
gave it to no, I'm not saying making money is the goal. The goal is to improve people's lives. The making money is an added benefit. If you gave them free
But
houses,
how are you improving their lives?
it would make because you're
Housing.
homeless people gave them a
No,
free
no.
house.
Well, okay. I mean, but you're also talking about like
They'll just become
we're
homeless
talking
again.
about like the people that
Healthcare.
are
But that's
raging
not
against
what
society that
happens
feel like they've been left
statistically.
behind, and lots of those people have houses. They have food security. They have like
Yeah,
they
that's
have
about
generally.
individualism. It's because the average American thinks everyone
I,
outside the
I do
walls of their
agree.
house is a demon who wants to kill them. Like
Okay,
my
so
house is my
let's
castle.
talk about something that isn't
I
materialism. Let's talk about like a philosophy. Like what is the philosophy of the future?
I
okay, I
did.
have to say, I think it's ridiculous to refer to housing homeless people as materialism. Okay,
I do
like
too. I agree.
we need to find a line of what we actually think is materialism and what we think is just giving you the
So
necessities to
I
live.
agree with you. The reason why I'm
Materialism
saying
is
it's not
Housing,
valuing
materialism is
healthcare,
because
individuals,
like
though.
education.
you're using an extreme example, right? Because like I think the majority, like when you were talking
Well,
about how people
my
because I'm
go to
focused
work
God.
on
and
the
they have no
vulnerable
time to do
community.
anything, like when you're talking about people go to work, have no time to do anything, and then they're not informed and things like that. Like those people have home security, um they have a job, and
The way
they have food security, and yet they feel deeply unsatisfied with their life to
Can
the
I
point
ask
I
that they're
you all
agree.
a
willing to just
question?
throw the entire U.S. system into chaos, and they're willing to buck due process and or what
Can I just
what
ask
we see as
one
due process.
question to everybody here? If you were a billionaire and it's 2008, you watch the financial crisis happen, people on the streets are mad, we have Occupy Wall Street going on, right? You are the capital class. Like you're not just a billionaire, you're like deep state billionaire. What would you do to make it more difficult for them to take your money? Well, you would make it more expensive to live. You would make it so they have
Kill
to
them all.
work longer hours. You would have to make it so
If they're
that
dead, they
they
can't take my
are
money.
much more stressed. You would have to build the economic system where the
Do you have any
material
evidence that
conditions
happened?
are. Yes, I do, because we live in those material conditions
I mean,
that
there's
did
other
not
reasons
exist
why those
20
things
years
might
ago.
happen, right? Like recovering from a recession might cause all of those
Yeah,
things.
all of that is caused by capital.
But
Capital
that's
is
not like individuals like
no,
conspiring
it's
to make
I'm not
people's lives
saying
harder.
that.
Okay.
No, they're not. They're
Okay. Okay.
conspiring
That's good.
to take the things that are
Wait.
happening and to spin them in a way that they can steal from you.
Yeah,
It's
but
not
billionaires.
like they're
Wait,
not making the
so you
issue.
are saying there's a
They're
conspiracy. There's an
no, no, no.
intentional.
Yes.
The
They did take
conspiracy
advantage.
Is there any
happens
intentionality?
after.
No, they did. They did take advantage. Billionaires did take advantage of
It's
the
called the shock
2008
doctrine.
crash. They did because they were able to
Yeah,
buy assets at much lower prices. So they did take
we do
advantage
this
of
every
that crash.
recession.
Like they
Recessions
do.
and depressions
But
are good for the capitalist class.
this is not to make
This
people
is
less wealthy. This is just to make themselves more wealthy. Like this is.
yes, that's
Yeah,
the whole
but
plan.
two things can be
We
true at
did this
once,
in
though.
1933. There was the business plot
Well,
where
I
J.P.
think
What
it's
Morgan,
not
I'm
just the
Morgan
saying is
intention.
Stanley,
what I'm
I
saying is
think
if
it's
there was
Remington
a
more
way
Arms,
to
the
they
make
tried to
everyone
intention.
coup
more wealthy, that
FDR.
billionaires wouldn't like
They literally
billionaires
tried to do
don't
fascism
need to be the
in the
enemy. Like
30s for this.
they're not trying to make people less well off.
I'm sorry,
Um,
this is children talk for me.
I
I'm
mean,
out.
I
Like
agree, girl. Messy
Thank God.
behavior.
Holy shit.
Messy behavior. I would say I agree, some of them maybe aren't intentionally making other people poor, but, billionaires aren't fucking brain dead. Like, they know that if they have the money, then somebody else does not have that money that they have. Like, they're
Well, I
not
think she was
all
saying billionaires
idiots.
are the enemy, which is what I was pushing back against. I'm not pushing back against the fact that billionaires are making it harder for people by pursuing their own interests.
I mean, they can be the enemy if they're doing exactly what you think is like fucking up your life, even if they're not doing it intentionally. I think the idea that enemies are all like malicious and evil and they just want to fuck up your life, like that's just not how
Well, there's
people
also
work.
the case that not
Most
everything's a
people are
zero-sum game.
complex individuals. True, but when you're talking about money, unless there's more being printed, it is a zero-sum game.
Sorry.
Money's always being printed.
No, it's no problem. I was just going to say, do you not think there's some sort of intention in the way of if they know that some of their decisions make life harder for the working class, right? Do you not think there is some like malicious intention there because they're aware that this is going to impact them in a certain way? For example, that's why I brought up the fact that they were capitalizing during the 2008 recession. Some billionaires invested in struggling companies because they knew they had the opportunity to do so, and they knew it would also affect like the lower working class. So I'm just curious, like,
So
Hold on,
I guess
can I
don't.
can I just jump in here, right? Because if a billionaire sees a struggling company during the recession and then invests in that company, don't they actually help the people who are
They can
struggling?
just outright buy it and control it.
yes
Which is, I think,
and
what they were saying.
no. I think they can also like they're capitalizing off the fact that like okay, how would I explain
The answer
this?
is yes, Wick. It's yes.
No, I don't think the answer is just yes. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. I think there are ways to capitalize, like if because they wouldn't have been struggling if there was no recession. And remind me again, what the initial cause of the 2008 recession was? It when they were shorting? Do you guys know?
Well, it
what I'm
wasn't
trying to say?
billionaires who were. Well, it was some
No,
billionaires.
I'm not.
The 2008 housing crash. This crash happened because that they were overvaluing housing, right, and using these kind of like weird style mortgages, right,
Predatory
that
mortgages.
put
Yeah.
people kind of underwater.
And there was no like regulatory framework to prevent this from happening.
It was being pushed to very very to people frankly who could not afford it, right? It was being in a predatory manner pushed on people who could not afford it, and so a lot of debt just skyrocketed. People were it got to a point where people
They
just
defaulted.
they couldn't afford it anymore.
Okay.
And it just
Yeah, and a lot of it was like, we're just going to assume that everyone will be able to stay solvent and pay on their mortgage on time, basically. And then that didn't work.
Okay, sorry. For some reason, I thought there was the shorting of what's it called? Not bonds.
Stocks?
I'm thinking of something else. Yeah, probably is what I'm thinking of, but I'm thinking of a whole entire different topic. But in general, I do think
that was probably also happening as well. Like it's all like a big cascade of different
Yeah.
people leveraging debt to make
You might be
more
referring
risky.
to Michael Burry, who was the first person to call out the impending crash, and he did short the market and made a shit ton of money out of it. But
okay.
for most other people, including billionaires, they lost a ton.
The major thing was the housing crisis. I think I'm speaking about probably just like aspects of what happened there. But no, I just think that taking advantage during a certain time that they knew that eventually they'd make a ton of money off of, like for example, buying a ton of not bonds, but stocks at a huge discount. They knew that they would be the ones to be able to do that. Even though, yeah, some billionaires lost money, they were going to recoup it in the long term. But let's be honest, working class, the 99%
most
were not
billionaires
gonna
lost
do that.
money. Like most billionaires did not benefit from
Like they were
the
going to
crash.
recoup it overall because, for example, I will give you Warren Buffett. He recouped quite a bit after the 2008 crash because he invested.
entire economy
He
did.
might have bought out Goldman Sachs, for example.
He had a ton of cash in bonds.
But I'm just saying, like that's just one example of someone who
Well, that
knew
is a
that
part of our
eventually
point,
they would
yeah.
make money.
Are you saying you're not
people who benefit from the drop? People who
I don't think
benefited
you're
from the
implying
drop
that
because
Warren
they
Buffett
deserved.
actively attempted to push the economy toward a crisis. I don't think you're implying that. But
No. I'm not
then
saying
what is
like
the point of
he's
what
the
you're saying?
reason for the 2008 crash. I'm saying he took advantage of the crash at the time, knowing that it would also hurt. Like he would be able to benefit from this in the long term, is what I'm trying to say. So he was aware of that.
Yeah, I think that the mistake that we're kind of making, and I want
do
to
think
jump
that's a
in
good point.
for a couple points here. So give me a
Thanks,
moment.
Buckaroo.
Give me a moment to finish my thoughts, please. It's going to take a moment here. Two things mainly. On this, I think that we are mistaking a billionaire or someone who is ultra wealthy, has the resources to better handle a crash or a recession or a hard time than the average person, the middle class or the lower class, the people in poverty. A billionaire losing half his income is going to hurt a lot less than if I lost half my income or you lost half your income. They will be able to weather it far greater. That can seem as if they are taking advantage, but that's them just making moves to protect themselves. I don't know if we consider that I don't know if it's as malicious as perhaps as being
I guess I'd call it
implied.
unethical.
Well, again,
Or
Yeah,
no,
I
don't
don't
need-
think
yeah, but
It's not
again,
unethical.
I said give me a moment because I want to finish my thoughts here. So please, I had two. That's the first one, and the second thought I have is that even while I will admit that we have people in extreme poverty in America, we have 700,000 homeless people, etc. The vast majority of Americans are in a better place than most of the world, right? I can order a private taxi for my pizza to bring it here, right? I could do that right now. I could do it off the donos I've received just in the last hour, right?
And we're fatter
do
than
it off
ever.
of credit. You could do it off of credit, even.
I don't
mean,
use credit,
we
right?
have.
But
I don't
because
agree with it.
is-
I don't
debt is
agree
a
with
terrible
that. But
thing.
I'm saying, like, we also have a credit system that's people also have access to.
Well,
like,
I think
there are
I think
levels to just how much convenience and comfort the average American has access to than people in many other countries.
I think something that we can all agree on, particularly on the topic of education, is that we have a serious financial education problem in this country. So the Ivory Fool, you mentioned that it's hard to kind of pin this evisceration of the middle class just on the gig and contract economy, although I think that's a huge part of it. But another huge issue, and Scott Besant actually just raised this, is this complete financial literacy that's just not being taught in our education system. People do not understand debt. They are over leveraging. They are getting stuck into pathways where the only viable solution is bankruptcy. People do not know how to contribute to an IRA and build a nest egg. And I think that is actually a very positive out of this administration, is that they're actually bringing that into the limelight and trying to install that into our education system.
I absolutely agree. I actually think I think a lot of people benefit from the economic illiteracy of the average American. Sorry, Mooncakes, you were saying something.
No. It's just a question. So sorry, because you said the administration. Is the administration adding a financial literacy course structure to the education system? Is that part of their plan?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if it's been fully fleshed out. Scott Besant talked about it, I think it was 2 days ago, where he kind of honed in on that as a huge education gap within the United States right now. I don't know, if I haven't read into a detailed plan or anything. I don't know if it even exists.
No, I was just curious because if it was, that's great. But in general, I haven't heard anything about it, so that's why I was just a little curious.
No, it's fair. It's fair.
But I mean,
I would honestly be floored if
feel
they
like we're not
actually.
I feel like we're not addressing that. The more we talk about the economy and the finances, we're doubling down on materialist philosophy, and we're not thinking about what.
There's a difference between materialism, which is purchasing just kind of, unimpactful goods, and being responsibly fiscally and being able to
hang on, because what I'm saying is you're tying happiness and life satisfaction to the economy rather than
having a house is usually going to benefit your happiness long term. Having a house, having food, all of this shit is necessary.
That's materialism.
No, but
your material possessions are going to benefit your happiness. That's
okay.
what
I think I know where we're missing each other. I think that what we're trying to say, Ivory, is that there is a threshold, right, upon which if you go below it, the material conditions really impact your happiness, your sense of well-being, your purpose in life, all these things. It has a far greater impact on those things, your health, etc., than it would otherwise. But once you cross that threshold in an upward direction, then it becomes less impactful. So whether I have, as long as I can meet my needs and most of my wants materially, that's not what drives
Well,
me,
this has
right?
been like the neoliberal mantra, right?
No,
Like, and it's exactly what's led us to this point that
I just
we.
think it's again, this is back to earlier. It's ridiculous to be arguing that people wanting some sort of financial stability and wanting to be able to afford, let's say, their house or healthcare, like afford going to the doctor when they're 70 or 80 years old, okay, they need to have access to certain things. Like my
Ivory, I think the point that you're making is that once basic needs are met, additional capital doesn't really impact happiness overall. We obviously see poorer countries all over the world which are exponentially happier than the United States. The issue is when Americans, 60% of them are living paycheck to paycheck. When there is a financial crisis
that's not
like
true.
2008,
That's like a
what's not
misnomer.
true? What's not true?
That 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Like it's like the median American has like $4,000 of savings or something.
Okay, and how long does that last in a financial crisis?
About 2 or 3
Yeah,
months.
That's really not a lot.
$4,000 unless your car breaks down and then like
Right.
your fucking pet gets sick, your kid has to go to the hospital, like but
Like that's not, I don't know. I don't think that's like
your
I don't think
your
that's like
points about
investments. I think that's just
materialism
like
are just
available
That's an
cash.
emergency fund. That's an emergency fund, but a $4,000 emergency
Yeah.
fund is not going to get you through a 50%
Wait,
market
no,
crash.
the statistic that 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck or something like that is also tied to this other statistic that like the majority of Americans couldn't handle a $500 emergency expense, which is not true.
Yeah,
Like
I
that-
just
that-
hold on. If I was given $4,000 and told this is all you got to live on as long as you can, I could live for a few months off of
A
that.
few months?
Yes.
well
Like with
where
rent
it
and
depends
stuff, or-
it also
Oh,
depends on where you
They also
live.
Yeah, I
mortgage,
live
pay
in
your
a
credit
rural
card.
area. It's very, very low, right? Like all those.
And then if you're
$4,000
given
gets you
that-
through barely a month in New York.
Okay,
Yeah.
and this is a problem. I think this is a problem. Like we talked about there's. I think Visora, when she was here, she mentioned it that there are more homes than there are more empty housing. They're all in like bumfuck Idaho or
well
Zoning laws.
we also
all these
we also have an
crazy-
issue of we also have an issue of like open just empty housing in the cities as well. This was an issue in Seattle actually a couple years ago. This was like a massive issue. There were it was like the highest rate of empty housing in the nation for a period of time, and it seemed to be a lot of that might have been related to Airbnb, also just because they're like charging exorbitant prices in the cities, and like the people who work in the cities usually can't afford to live there, so they ended up like moving somewhere else, which is also why you see
What I'm
developments,
saying,
you know,
yeah, what
building
I'm
more and
saying
more.
is
a lot of this has to do with zoning laws, right? I mean, it is so
I agree
hard.
with you. I agree with you,
It is
but we're not.
so hard. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but I'm not here to argue zoning laws, but basically what I'm saying is that a lot of people are living in places and living a lifestyle that they cannot afford, and frankly, and maybe this will get me canceled, but that's their fault.
No, I think that's going too far because, for example, I used to live and work in Vancouver, and it's not easy. Like, if you have a job in Vancouver, are you expected to live now an hour and a half away? How are you then to get to that job in that place and make it on time every day, right? There's a certain thing to want to live close to where you work, and it makes sense that people would want to do that, right? But when you up the cost, I think for now, like a one bedroom in Vancouver could run you $3,300 a month, and that's a one bedroom, right? And then we're going to tell people, okay, well, just move. Well, if they don't drive, how are they going to get to work? What if they can't afford a car? What if their disposable income is really only $500 a month? How are we going to tell people that that's just your fault? And I think that's the concern
Because
there.
a lot of times people will choose jobs in areas that they know are high cost of living and that they know they can't afford, rather than accept a lower paying job in an area which is much, much less.
Most jobs are in like big,
cost of
like let's
living.
be honest, big cities are going to have an abundance of jobs, right? Because so many people are
Certainly,
there.
but the rural
so they're going to
areas
have an
also,
abundance.
right? What I'm trying to say
Well,
here
if you're already
is-
living by the city, then like
didn't we just have this conversation like on this channel just 30 minutes ago about how most people are financially illiterate and don't know how to handle their money?
yes, I agree.
Yes,
But that's
absolutely.
a part
Do
of,
you think
I
that
think
contributes
that's like
to
a
a lot
failure
of
of
the problems that people are having with their financial burdens that they have?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I do see this as like a massive issue. I actually think not to throw shade, but I think I think leftists that are unwilling to recognize
I don't think you can
that they
pick me out.
actually have access. Yeah, as long the amount of leftists that are willing to ignore like the access to convenience and comfort that they have definitely does not help communities that think they basically have more money than they do, that
So,
act like they can
yeah.
spend more than they can.
I'll give you my perspective on this because I was in the military for a few years, and we all had the housing was provided to us, right? We all were given housing. We were all given a stipend, right, and things like that. And yet you had a
What
lot of
happens
the
to
enlisted
veterans, right?
people coming in, the young people who did not know how to handle their money and would get taken for a ride, rack up massive bills, rack up massive debt, and not be able to escape it. And again, in the military, you don't even have school debt. You're getting that for free, right? And so I think that this idea that, and this is something I try to preach a lot to left, right, center, personal responsibility. There are things that you can't control. There are things that make things harder. And I agree with you. Costs of housing because of zoning laws and all that, it's a problem. But let's not pretend that you can't, that most people who are struggling financially, most people who are struggling financially are struggling financially because they're living beyond their means. And they need to reduce
That's
that.
an education problem.
I don't think that's always. Yeah, I agree.
It's not
actually,
always the
education problem.
case.
I don't
I
think
agree
always
it's not
the case.
always the case. I'm saying most. A majority.
I think that's even.
I would actually agree that the majority are.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say I would agree, but I also, again, I do think that's like partially an education issue, which is why I think, again, education is such a useful tool that we're like throwing to the wayside when we could, help people, maybe not tomorrow, but in like 10 years when they leave the education system.
But
Sorry,
Wick, you're also illustrating why materialism is an issue, right? So this entire mindset of spending all your material income beyond your means is what is ending these people in these precarious positions financially. Not to tie this all back to kind of more community, family-centered kind of mindset where you're not focused on materialism, but just the growth of your family and your small communities is a much better mantra that is much more sustainable because you're just not focused on spending money. You're focused on the immediate people around you, faith, instead of just purchasing goods from Amazon that's just making other countries wealthier.
So Shade, why can't we come up with a new thing that is also an alternative to materialism, but also something that builds upon community values? Why can't
a new religion?
Why do we need to go back? What? Sorry.
Like a new religion?
I don't think it even needs to be a new religion. I mean, it needs to be some kind of moral structure, right? It needs to be some kind of alternative for giving people meaning. Like, this is what I'm saying, that if all we're focusing on is saying if we eradicate homelessness, I don't think that solves the Republicans that put Trump in the White House are not homeless, right?
Correct.
And so it's like, from a liberal perspective, it's like, if I think this is a really big problem, I need to be looking beyond the material conditions of people, and I think a big part of that is like, well, when I talk to liberals and they talk about conservatives, they're like dripping with condescension, hatred, and just and bigotry, frankly, toward conservatives and toward the idea that your family is more important than those on the outside. And I think a big part of that has to do with the fact that, like I said at the beginning, that the number of conservative professors has gone down by 66%. That they were at 30% and rising up until the 80s, and then dramatically started falling once businesses started booming, basically.
But do you not think that there's a reason for that? That maybe more conservative people believe, have such different values. You can even say capitalism. That their idea is that they want to be more profitable, when more, I would say, liberal people are concerned with things like the arts or like literature, and they don't see education as a way to profit. And I think.
But do you think that conservatives are incapable of being academically rigorous, of being intelligent?
No, I don't think they're incapable of being intelligent. I don't think that'd be fair. But I think in some ways
Obviously not.
they're incapable of valuing things that don't concern profit.
What do you
Wait,
mean
what?
by that?
Like, I think they value business more than anything else. I think that's where their issue lies.
No. Conservatives
I was about
are
conservatives.
much more religious.
No,
They value
yes.
their religion
I
and
think religion
family.
has to do with that. I think you can still like be, I would say, business minded and still be religious. I don't think
Right,
can't
but
have
you're saying
two.
that it's the sole quality of conservatives.
I'm
They
saying it's an issue.
they
with
are more
conservatives.
entrepreneurial. They are more capitalistic, and I think that's part of the problem. Is
On average.
when
On average.
when you look at kind of the cost benefit analysis or opportunity cost of conservatives going into higher education, the simple truth is that they believe they can make more outside of education and therefore provide for their families better. So it's funny how this keeps coming back to education. Yeah,
So
It's an
I
interesting
think we can work in the hypothetical that conservatives are not prioritizing education, right? And that there's that, and maybe that's an issue.
I don't see that as an issue, really. If you look at, I think there's some studies done where like the average IQ with somebody with an undergrad degree versus somebody in the trade is a difference of 2 points, right? So it's immaterial, and IQ has a standard deviation of 15. So just having a degree doesn't actually really indicate any kind of intelligence whatsoever. So I don't agree with that point.
Well, so I'm mostly talking about how we're living in different realities. That it's not an issue that conservatives are not being educated or they're not being intelligent. It's that we don't have like a shared way to rigorously like define our models of the world, and like that usually happens in academia.
Yeah, I that is a good point. It is like the
Fair.
place where everybody seems to understand others more. It's like, everybody knows the change that happens to the average high school graduate when they go off to school for a year and they come back and they're such a cool kid and they've suddenly developed some empathy skills and they know what a hangover is like. There are I do agree. I think that at least there is a good point that there isn't a community space that that encourages that same academic rigor in like
In a business community.
inter-party like interactions. We have a
And
lot
so
of leftist communities and right communities, but nowhere near as much overlap.
Yeah, and what I hear a lot is that leftists don't need that. We don't need to talk to conservatives because they need to talk to us, but we don't need to talk to them because we have rigor and they don't. And so I think that my question to the liberals is, what do you think that there's value in talking to people that have parochial empathy, that have empathy for their family, as opposed to empathy for people further away?
I mean, personally, absolutely. I think leftists that choose not to talk to conservatives are absolute lunatics. I think they're idiots. I think they choose to be, misinformed on the perspective of the average person. If you want to know how people feel, you should probably talk to multiple people on their feelings, as opposed to just like your bestie.
This might be bad to say, but I guess
Go ahead,
I
say
don't
it.
think it's bad to talk to conservatives. Yeah, this is more controversial. I got people have not even on TikTok for this. But like,
go on.
would I be friends with a conservative or invite them to like a family? Of course not. Like personally, but that's just a personal thing. I just think the values are so different. However, would I have a conversation with them and see their point of view? Yeah, let's have a conversation. We could talk about.
Do you think that
but-
your
but-
model of
hold
the
on,
world
hold
would
on.
be better
Funny you say
by
that.
talking to a conservative?
But that is so polarizing. I'm a very deep red conservative. I've only dated liberal women my entire life.
Ooh,
I
they're
do not.
probably not that liberal.
No, they're very
No,
liberal. They voted for
I
Kamala
would not
Harris.
be
They voted
surprised.
for Kamala Harris. All right. My thing is I don't prioritize politics as like an apex qualifier to be in a relationship. And I actually believe that liberals are much more polarizing in that sense. They will absolutely not come to the table with conservatives, let alone date them.
Nope.
So I see this as almost a uniquely liberal problem. This kind of extreme polarization.
I wouldn't call it a problem. I think there's no problem with us, like I said, conservatives and liberals having conversations and being able to be like bipartisan in a way. However, I just don't think, and I think it is really important in politics. I think it does play a big role into people's lives, and it is something to take very seriously. It's just that the value systems are so different that,
That's
like,
true.
for me,
Can
I would
I-
have no reason to have them in my
I am
life.
Can I
Figure it out.
ask?
Like, just
Can
an
I just?
example.
I want to
I
interrogate
actually,
this for a moment.
I do
Just real
think that.
quick. I want to interrogate this a moment from Mooncake because I
Oh,
want.
I'm on her. I'm on her.
I'll ask you
I
both
actually
then,
agree.
right? You say that you won't bring a conservative home for dinner, right? Well, let's take the
Well, like, okay,
relationship
we're
stuff,
having like a
To an
put it on the
extent,
conversation,
side.
right?
We'll put it on the side.
Yeah, to an
But you
extent,
wouldn't
but
invite them over for movie night to hang out and to
no,
things.
probably not.
When you
no.
say conservative,
what she
what
said.
do you mean?
When I say
Well-
conservative, like, are you asking me like what values they
So,
demonstrate?
for
that I'd be
example,
like,
someone who
sorry.
didn't vote in the last election, they think that, you know what, I couldn't really decide. I don't care very much. I believe in God and the family, and yeah, I'm a Republican, I guess. I like guns. Is that someone you wouldn't ever have over for dinner?
Probably not. I do think voting is really important. I think when people choose not to vote, I think I just think it's a character issue. To me, that's like a character flaw is how I would
Okay, we're
see
not
it.
talking about dating. We're talking about like
No, yeah.
someone over for movie night.
Yeah, that's like, I still think it's a character flaw. Like, I think that person
Well,
isn't worth
So
really
even someone who just
Yeah, I mean,
interacting
didn't
with.
I think
vote.
this is fine, Wick, because
I'm
like,
not.
I think like we are
This is
polarized.
for
Like
some people.
the
I'm not.
main thing is like
Yeah, I think.
Someone.
I
Go.
didn't um
You
because
go.
I was gonna like I was gonna try to move the conversation forward, so I wanted to let you get in
Yeah,
if you
go ahead,
Oh, okay.
Buckaroo. Give us your answer here.
I guess personally, maybe for a movie night, but not for a family dinner is kind of where I would be with the average conservative.
What do you mean
um,
when you say conservative? I
unless-
asked her. What do you mean?
Conservative. So I actually like that she pointed out it's really just about like common traits that the average conservative typically has that also tend to inform their being a conservative. There are certain like I try, like, for example, I try to be pretty accepting and understanding to people who live their lives differently from myself, as long as I don't think they're like hurting a bunch of other people. I'm usually not gonna say like they shouldn't be allowed to do that, blah blah blah. Like, that's not something I would do. Where there are times where I've talked to, and I have conservative friends, to be clear, like I can still interact with them. I just might not invite them to meet my whole family, a very progressive family.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't blame
you
you
know,
if
I-
someone is like anti-Semitic, if they're a self-described Nazi,
Yeah,
if they're saying that
exactly. If
women
they- if
don't
they
have shouldn't
say
be able to
stuff-
vote. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
I,
Or
but,
if
I, but
they-
I
or
don't
if
think
they
that
make comments that
I think
are-
that a lot of that is like taboo engagement. Like, I think that's like I don't
I
think
so I
Sounds
do
like
agree.
conservatives are more
Oh,
accepting.
if you let me finish, I do agree. I have conservative friends. Like, they aren't coming around yelling like racial slurs at me. Okay, I think you can interact with conservatives very well. But I think there are some values that the average conservative has that I just don't have at all. And so when they make comments that are related to these values, it's like weird to me. It actually turns me off a bit. Like, if they see somebody with like, I don't know, a weird outfit, weird hair, they got a weird name, and then they go out of their way to say something like really cruel or really mean about them. They might see that as a joke, but personally, I would be like, well, like, what the fuck did they do to you? And that is something
Do you
that
think
I've
all
experienced a
conservatives
lot,
do
where I
that?
blah, 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 blah. I'm not
Okay.
saying all conservatives do it. I'm saying there are just different values that I have from a lot of the average self-identified conservative that I think there are some that I just don't spend time with at all because they actually are assholes, and there are others that like we just don't agree on a lot of things.
Can I say something a little bit more controversial? I equate now conservative with red pill. I'm just gonna put that on the table, and I know that has nothing to do with the topic today, but I honestly equate
no, I
them.
mean,
both.
I think that
I
even more
kinda get it.
justifies like if you're thinking of red pill conservatives as the conservatives, whether or not you'd invite them,
Extremes.
like that makes sense.
I mean, what you guys are talking about are the extremes, right? Like the
Yeah.
neo-Nazis and the red pill Gen Zers or whatever. That is not what an average conservative is. An average conservative is very open-minded, welcoming. And this is anecdotal, but think about like a conservative being at like Portland University, right? They're going to feel extremely isolated. They're going to be ripped apart for their opinions. They probably won't even
They might be
voice
actively
they won't even
yeah, they
voice
might
their
be actively
opinions.
harassed.
Actively
their
harassed,
opinion.
100%, and there's plenty of video evidence out there to prove that. I would make the argument that a liberal, being in the deep South, like the Carolinas or Alabama, they're not going to face nearly as much extreme
A white
polarization
liberal
and
or a
isolation.
black liberal? Tell me what color that liberal is first, and then we can talk about
Okay.
how they
Yeah,
feel in the
seriously.
South.
I'm
Okay,
being
Either race, either race.
spammed. Okay, I'm being
because
spammed.
I know,
and
like,
just real quick, because I have to do this apparently. And I hope it's not a reference to anything offensive or weird, but they keep asking you, Mooncake, would you go if would you let a conservative take you to a baseball game if
somebody's
they
thirsty.
paid?
Somebody's thirsty.
Wait,
Pentuple, are you sending
wait,
this? Is this
is there a certain
Pentuple?
person who sent it? Wait, is there a certain person
It's
who
Rabbit.
sent it?
Well, yeah, it's Rabid Wombat's spamming this, and so is
said,
No
"Would
Cow
I-
Mike and a few
Would I let
others.
them take me? Would I let them take me shopping and
No, to a
just ditch
baseball
them
game.
after?
To a baseball game if they paid.
I love that you're like, oh, take me shopping? Oh, of course. Oh my god.
I mean, maybe, but you're never gonna hear from me again. Like if it's just like a free thing. Okay, then
Okay.
I'm out of
Well,
there. Hell
answer your
yeah.
question. Asked and answered. Okay. I they were just really
Hell
Tell
yeah.
them it's
wanting
not
me to ask
tricking if
that,
you
so.
got it. Yeah, that's not a problem.
okay.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
I like what I was trying to get at at the beginning when I was asking about this is like,
Mm.
do you feel like you will learn something really important by like that you'll there's a perspective that you're completely missing by not talking to a conservative?
Absolutely.
Talk to them.
Absolutely.
Can
I
we-
think it's still
can
important
we
to get like
just
not
for
live in an echo
my-
chamber.
Just for my edification, because I'm still I understand the Mooncake. You said that you equate conservative with red pill. What would you guys consider? Just give me 3 traits that conservatives have that liberals don't.
Stick up their ass. Scared of change. Sometimes religion. Done and done, baby.
I would say, I guess, Curtis's. I think I'm going to use the word or use the words traditional values, and sometimes I think traditional values can mean something more malicious than we
Mhm.
kind of
Girl.
see it as.
Absolutely.
Example was like the idea that you have to make profit all the time. I don't even know what word I would use for that. Private business, private ownership. I don't know like what word I would use for that. And then maybe I don't know. Like lack of empathy. Another one is like lack of empathy. I don't think they really are able to empathize with a lot of people. A lot of different things.
I mean, that's what I was.
Mm.
You can go.
I don't agree with any of these.
I was just gonna say, I actually
Shits,
think-
but go
I
ahead.
actually think the no, you do have sticks up your ass. I actually think the
Hold on. If you don't think that leftists don't also have sticks up
Yeah,
their
come
ass,
on.
I don't know what.
no,
There's definitely some
leftists,
leftists.
There's
I will
something,
just
for
say
sure.
that the person you argued with most on this
Leftists
panel,
are
who
a
you hated
stick in
most
the
on this panel,
mud.
was not a
Yeah,
conservative.
who was the most polarizing person on this panel today?
I
No,
agree.
there's some leftists that are dickheads. That's
Stick
not
in the
even a question.
mud. Conservatives have a stick up their ass. Different, but both
Well,
unpleasant.
So
I would say
mean, I
liberals
think
have a stick up their ass extending all the way to their fucking brain.
well, so, like it sounds like, and I think I agree with Wick that like it's really important that if we're talking about philosophy, if we're talking about like moral cohesiveness, that we understand that we have a shared understanding of what makes someone a conservative and what makes someone a liberal. And I think it's obviously not going to be like quippy things like, conservatives are afraid of things, conservatives have sticks up their asses, liberals have sticks up their asses. Like it's not going to be
Afraid of change. I mean, I said afraid of change because I wanted to point out the fact that conservatives typically like to they want to be conserving fucking energy. They don't want to be changing a bunch of things if they feel like they're benefiting from the system. That's what I mean when I say they
But
are
that's
scared
also
of
not,
change.
very
they
clearly
like
not the case
they
with
like
MAGA, for
traditional
example, right?
values. They
Well,
like
the-
traditional values. They like traditional values. They don't want changing genders. They don't want changing sexualities. They don't want changing education systems. They don't want changing how much
But
avoidance of change
don't
do
we
you have
also
to
like
have before you're a
criticize the
conservative?
center left because like they're so hell bent on keeping the system stable or something like that? Like they're so hell bent on
What do you mean?
just like
I-
not.
No,
I think
No,
what
I would
we're
not say
kind of
that.
what we're kind of referring to as a bigger picture is the difference in moral frameworks between liberals and conservatives. conservatives rely on Christianity as their moral framework, where liberals are typically more utilitarian, and those two moral frameworks are often conflicting, in conflict with each other. They there's going to be some overlap, but there are also some staunch differences. And because there's two complete moral frameworks for these two parties, that is going to create tension and polarization. There's no way about that.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think we should all revert back to Christianity.
I mean, I think it's a very nuanced conversation, and like there needs to be some kind of way we can ground each other, and probably science is like the way that we have to like start trying. Like that's why I kind of brought up at the beginning that there's a genetic component to conservatism and liberalism, and an actually like surprisingly large one, that it's like between 30 and 60% that you can, just from your genetics alone, you're going to be a conservative or liberal.
I don't know about the genetics.
I think it is way too nuanced. Well, I think it is way too nuanced to argue that your political position can like be, there's like any sort of direct line or even like a wavy line from your political position to your DNA. There's so much in between that I think it's like,
there's a way to answer that question.
I understand what you're saying about the empathy and about how their empathy like reaches out. You're talking about conservatives usually experience empathy in their surrounding circle.
That's a separate study.
Liberals.
I mean, they haven't even.
The twin study to which you refer.
The twin study is saying, let's look at twins and say, do they?
I understand.
how? So for identical twins versus fraternal twins, how often do they like share?
If we measured
their
someone's
political ideology?
skull, could we decide whether they were conservative or liberal?
Probably not.
Well, it depends. Is their skull more similar to a Neanderthal? In which case, I would argue we could totally figure it out.
It was a joke about phrenology, but regardless,
like twin studies are not phrenology. This is how we determine how things are genetic.
I think a part of the problem, though, is that you're equating this as like inherently causal. Like this could all be correlative. We actually don't know like all of the nuances of the individual lives of these people. Like twin studies are really useful when you're talking about connecting things directly to genetics, but they aren't the end all be all of genetic studies.
What do you mean they're not the end all be all? Like I don't understand. Like I want to know more about your contention here.
Well, I mean, there's like literally all of adolescence. There's all of their development that will strongly influence like how they perceive
those things
the
are
world.
controlled for. That's why you look at twins.
Worldview.
But Ivory, this is why this doesn't make sense.
This is why I'm saying twin studies aren't.
It doesn't make sense because a conservative today is almost unrecognizable from like a George Bush conservative from 2000, right? Completely different value. It's a completely different set of values. The neoconservative movement versus the kind of populist Trump conservative. I mean, there's very.
I don't know if that's the case.
The idea that like a gene somehow kind of like mapped onto, I don't know, either a Bush conservative or a Trump conservative, which are two completely different mindsets and value systems altogether. It just doesn't make sense. Like. You're also the first person to ever
why can't you have different types of conservatives?
I have to say I did like John McCain. That's random, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Can you send the twin study, by the way?
But
yeah, it's like you can look it up on like Gallup.
Scientific consensus that being gay is genetic, right? So how are you going to say that conservatism is 100% definitively a genetic disposition? I mean,
no. I'm not saying. I'm saying that 30% of the variation in twins, like so, if you say we're going to compare identical twins versus fraternal twins. And what that basically saying is like identical twins have the exact same DNA. So we're going to see how often those identical twins end up conservative or liberal. And then we're going to look at how often do fraternal twins end up conservative or liberal. And then we're going to look at the differences. And so the difference between those like those rates of like whether or not they're conservative or liberal between those two sets of twins kind of that's what gives us I'm
going to find
a measurement of how
that
genetic
is not
in a pill.
You got to send me that.
Okay.
I don't believe that at all.
Put it in people's.
But
aspirin.
also,
okay.
Yeah, I could believe that study. I just don't think this is something that we can now say is applicable to like every conservative. I just think it's ridiculous to think that
No,
this is the one study that's like saving our understanding of conservatives.
So the
I
applicableness.
just like, what if they have some fucking
Okay, I'm throwing a flag on the play. I don't care
Like,
about the
there's
genetic
also-
side of it. I don't think
Okay,
that
okay.
even if we think that there's a genetic side of it, it doesn't matter. I don't think we can, unless we're
Yes.
talking about gene editing, we're not going to fix that. So let's concentrate on other things. I do want to read some.
Wait,
super
I'm not trying
chats.
to say that we need to fix anything. I'm bringing it up because it kind of indicates that like there's a diversity that is important in our evolution.
I agree.
And
I
or it
don't
suggests
think
that
diversity
anyway.
is that important.
Well, I mean,
Bro.
it suggests
You're gonna get
a yin and
diseases.
yang in like our evolutionary history.
Diversity is. Sorry.
You know what
I'm so sorry.
diversity is?
Finish your point.
Diversity is reading these super chats, so I can make a little money and people can send me more.
Okay, and
super
then I
chats
do
and-
have a point on diversity, actually.
Fair enough.
After.
$5 from Dwight Baldwin to say the lady who lives in Australia since 2018 doesn't know what is going on here now. We just started phasing out food dyes, for example. Thank you for the $5. Firechild, a member for 16 months. Have I been a YouTube on YouTube for 16
Firechild, what's up?
months? Just wanted to a tier 2 as well. So thank you for that, Firechild. Says just wanted to say that all the major corporations have been buying small businesses out just to shut them down. Illegal, but they get away with it. Thank you for those membership. And then $5 more from Firechild. Fuck the 401k. I guarantee it was some rich business owner's idea. Bring back pensions. Thank you again for the $5. Then $2 more from Firechild, who is funding my channel today. Thank you again. Marginal taxes on the wealthy. Yes. $10 from Psychonaut. Wick, play the Chinese dude saying that we gutted our middle class because our corps and government didn't want to invest in our infrastructure and other things. Thank you for the $10. I don't have that link on my fingertips. I'm sorry. And then $2 from Testicle Johnson, $2 Canadian to say USA is doomed. Abandon all hope. China will win. And again, keep sending me some money. We got about 15 minutes left in this. So keep giving me some money, and then I have one more question. Then we're gonna go closings. You had a point though, Buckaroo. Go give us your point.
Yeah. I think diversity is necessary biologically and socially. I think having a plethora of ideas only exponentially increases, what possible developments are to be made in the future, like what possible technology you could create. And I think the same goes for raising the standard of living for the average American, or not for the average American, for the most vulnerable Americans. I think this is a part of why I actually do talk to conservatives, because diversity of thought is necessary. I'm extremely progressive, and I find sometimes my positions are almost a little like intimidatingly progressive. And I talk to a conservative and I'm like, oh, okay. Like now I understand why this might be important to the average American in a way that I didn't before. And so I think, I think a diversity of thought, a diversity of genetics, very useful. Very useful.
I'm not being a proponent of like fucking your cousin. Just to be clear, in terms of diversity of genetics, like obviously diversity is important to an extent, but I think Democrats and liberals in general have completely overemphasized it, where diversity doesn't necessarily mean success. For example, a group of just black people can have very different opinions and bounce that off each other.
Well, I
There's
wouldn't
still
consider that
diversity in
particularly
thought.
diverse. Yeah. But that's my point.
it
I wouldn't
is. It's
consider a
still
group of
diverse
just
thought.
black
No,
people
he's saying that it is
diverse.
diverse, Buckaroo. He's saying that it is
diverse.
diverse because they have different opinions.
Okay.
Right.
Here's
I
my
agree
thoughts on
on that
diversity.
front, but I just think, but this is
Diversity
again why I
is
said like bringing in more diversity is only going to increase the possible developments in the future. Like, yes, you can have a group of black people that don't all agree on something. You could also have a group of black and white and like East Asian and Indian. Like you don't need to have. My point is just, I think diversity is unironically the future. But I think it's necessary for development.
Hold on, I'll keep this short and sweet. I'll keep this short and sweet. Diversity matters, but only insofar as diversity of thought. Diversity of thought matters, is important, and we can't do without it. Diversity of skin color or diversity of anything else,
Agreed.
marginal.
Think about
No,
it.
I think
In
that does
terms of
matter.
race, in terms of
Agreed.
race, we are the most diverse we've ever been as a country, and we're also the most polarized. Right. So that completely plays against this idea that just having
Well, we
more.
also have like
no,
Yeah,
no,
because
that
of
doesn't make
amounts of
sense. That doesn't make sense.
economic
because
and
The more diverse
economic
you are,
conservatives. Because
Oh,
of
what?
racist conservatives, I would say that plays a
the
big
more
role as well.
diverse you are, the more the less cohesion you're going to have. Like that's the trade-off of diversity, is that you
Right.
don't have
Conservatives-
cohesion. So it does make
conservatives
sense
tend to
that we're
be-
very
which is why we
racially
have things
diverse
like
and not
freedom of speech.
I
cohesive.
just think. Can I add something in there? This might another controversial point. I think conservatives, because they tend to be more uneducated, they don't exactly like diversity, and unfortunately show more racism. And I do think diversity, including skin color, is very important to the development of a society being okay with looking and seeing different people, which creates also more apathy. But yeah, let's put that out
I
there.
agree. Actually,
An emotional
I agree.
argument.
Actually, I think more emotional argument. Literally every fucking argument on this panel. I think diversity is actually necessary. I think when it comes to the diversity of how somebody looks, it is necessary because the way that society treats them will influence their perspective, which is why you hear like something referred to as Black culture or the Black community. It's not because every Black person has the same opinion, but because they all have an experience specific to being Black in America that a white person would not have inherently. A white person knows what it's like to be white in America, so they can offer like input on their perspective, which is just going to be different.
Wait.
And that's also why, though, I think your point on not all Black people have the same opinion is useful, because even when I would say all Black people experience some form of racism in America, they might feel differently about what they're experiencing, and they may have different models for approaching racism in their day-to-day lives. Like a Black person in Washington State, where I am, is going to live their life very differently from a Black person in Alabama.
So will a white person.
Yes, I know. I absolutely agree. But what I'm saying is like the way you are treated by the world will influence your perspective on it.
So do you think we should have more midgets?
Yeah, I do.
Why?
I think we should have more. I think we should have more as in existence, or just in.
I don't know. If diversity is strength, that means that we should be incentivized to get as many midgets into the United States because they have a unique perspective based on their physical looks, which you said is important for society.
I would argue living in a place where where the average American at least has a lot of their material needs met, we are going to see more people moving here in the first place who might not be able to thrive in other countries as well. But why would I take issue with more people with dwarfism in America? Like, what the fuck is the problem with that? Am I supposed to start putting up walls so that
bring 'em in.
no midgets allowed?
No.
Like, what am I going to do about
The
that?
walls don't have to be very high.
But maybe they have a unique perspective on accessibility. Maybe they have a unique perspective on healthcare, because they're probably going to doctor's appointments more, so they are experiencing a lot of the pitfalls of healthcare that other people who don't have health issues aren't experiencing. They still have unique perspectives.
But can't we
And I'm
just
not
figure
saying-
that out with the midgets that we have already?
Let me get to $20.
Your argument is just
Yeah, let me get
not
this
worth
$20.
much.
It's a great counter example.
Just real quick. Alexander Wren, thank you for the $20. Says this: the U.S. is the most diverse country in the world and always has been. It's also the most successful and powerful country. Most of our greatest geniuses came from other countries because we didn't inhibit them here. Thank you for the $20. And I think that this can round out the discussion, because I don't want to keep you guys hostage. I'm not Hamas or anything, right? I don't want to hold you hostage here, and I know you guys got to go soon. But I think the last point I will make before we get to closing statements is this: that I understand Mooncake's point and all the rest of your point about how we are struggling right now, that we're going through a crisis of meaning, a crisis of purpose. I think that part of the reason we are having this crisis is because of our success, because we are highly anxious, because we don't have to worry about basic survival for the most part. I think that we are choosing
Materialist.
to destroy ourselves in large part because we're bored. Because we're bored. We don't have to struggle for survival, but we want to struggle because it's built into us, and so we find something to fight about, right? I think that let me finish my
Wait,
point.
I feel like you've
let
been
me
very
finish my
contradictory
point.
on this point, Buckaroo. That
Let me
like you've
let
been
me-
oscillating back and
I
forth.
understand, but we're gonna get there, I promise, and I'll let you guys have your final word.
I just have a nuanced point to make.
Okay, I have a point to make that I need to finish. Okay, so here we go. I think that America currently is the strongest nation on earth. It may not be number one in every single category, and that's fine. But taken holistically, I would rather live in America than any other country. Our rents are cheaper than Canada, for example. And
We have free health care.
I think that our
We have-
dollar is stronger, and we can actually protect ourselves if we were invaded by a foreign country. So that'd be
European
nice.
Getting
Union.
weaker.
But here I will say this. I think that there are struggles coming up that we need to deal with, and we do need to figure out how to solve the problems that we do have. And I think that that will be a panel for another day to discuss that. We were all over the place today. I want to thank you all for coming. If you've enjoyed this content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, keep giving me money. I do need your money. It's really nice when I get your money. So my material conditions can be met. But I'm going to give each of these individuals an outro. And you can also find links to their stuff in my YouTube description. You can click on those links and go give them a follow or subscribe or what have you. We're going to give it first to Ivory, and then we're going to let New York Shade have the last word. So Ivory first, and we'll just go around. Ivory, closing thoughts. Tell people where you can find you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that we kind of talked a lot about different things that are going wrong, and I think it seemed I thought that we were having a pretty productive discussion about like what alternatives are there to kind of like how we view our meaning and purpose. And I think like it's clear that there's different prescriptions for between liberals and conservatives, and I think we really need to kind of drill down on what exactly we're each saying, um and how far can we like engage those hypotheticals. And I think like when we set aside the material conditions and really focus on the meaning and purpose conditions, that we can really move this conversation forward.
Okay, you can find the link to his Twitter and my YouTube. Click that link, give him a follow. Thank you for being here. Buckaroo, go ahead.
Big Papa Buckaroo Banshee. I think America is looking a little messy right now. Okay, hair's not done. I think we are declining, but I also really liked Ivory's, positive approach to look towards a better future and to see if there are ways that we can, you know, take control of what's happening right now and not let it all burn in flames. I'm a little anxious. Okay, I'm not gonna stomp on his argument. I think it's reasonable to say that we should change our perspective, but I'm anxious. That's all I gotta say. I'm anxious. Also, talk to people who have different political ideas. If if that's not literally the biggest thing I've taken from this debate, don't surround yourself with people who all share the same opinion as yourself, because at some point you're going to get really angry on a Discord panel and leave in the middle of it. Okay, and then you'll look very silly.
Okay, thank you for being here, gang. You can find her, and I give her YouTube channel in my description. Click on that link, give her a follow. Thank you for being here. Next up, Mooncake.
Okay. I think kind of when I first did my intro, I talked about political polarization, and I think during our conversation we saw that actually quite a bit. And I mentioned casual tension, and I think that was pretty obvious. And I think unfortunately there's this distrust, and this is coming from a Canadian, right? I'm not American. Thank goodness, by the way. Where I do think it does play a big role into the downfall of America. I truly believe that they are in their, and you know what, this might be a little dramatic, their final decline. I don't know if there was a route that America can take, where they can be bipartisan or find that kind of middle ground. And I think we're going to see it get worse over time, unfortunately. I don't think there's going to be an investment in education, even though we talked about it today. I don't see that happening. I think China will. They've already outnumbered you in manpower, almost military spending, manufacturing power, tech innovation. I think that will continue to happen. And luckily, I'm just going to say, Canada has this great new prime minister, Mark Carney. Let's go. And he's investing in our relationships with Australia, United Kingdom, New Zealand, bringing back the European values. I can't wait to see it. And yeah, I think America's kind of screwed. So I'm kind of gonna watch on the sidelines and see what happens. But
Get some popcorn.
Well,
I'll
if,
be
Am-
kind of
if
watching
America's
it go
screwed,
down.
so is Canada.
No, Bray, listen, we got you. Listen, the
100%.
Europeans will take care
You're
of us.
completely
Listen,
relying on it.
we're part of the monarch, not anymore. He's trying to move us away, and I think that's actually
Yeah,
very
good
important
luck.
for us.
Okay.
We're part of the monarch. Let's go.
$5.
Long live the king.
Yeah, check her out, gang. I got a link to her Twitch, and you can click that link and give her a follow if you want to see more of her takes. Thank you for being here. Hopefully we could have you on more often. $5 from Audacity to say being against dwarves as a nation seems very short-sighted. Thank you for the $5.
Agree.
Okay, and then we're last but not least, New York Shade. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Wick. Thank you, panelists. Great talking with everybody. You can find me on X at New York Shade. The first thing I want to point out is, isn't it incredible when you actually kick out an actual radical left lunatic, how well Buckaroo and I get along? I mean, there's no room for people like that in political
I will
discourse.
say I am actually pretty radically left, but
not that radical. I think the points that I've brought up, nobody's been able to contend with, and nobody's been able to dispute. And my points are that the middle class has been eviscerated as a result of this outsourcing of industrial jobs to overseas countries like China. There's been an over-reliance on the freelance gig economy, which is expected to be 50% of our entire employment base by the end of this decade. And what that means is extremely volatile, unstable wages. It means limited benefits. It means people aren't being able exposed to the equity markets where they can actually grow their wealth and a nest egg. So no matter how it's done, whether it's tariffs or some other mechanism, we need to bring those industrial jobs back to get us back into a world where people can operate off of one household income and actually grow wealth over time. And it also knocks out two birds with one stone, because we know from history that the countries that win wars have the biggest industrial bases. So we bring the industry back, we bring back employment, and we bring back or secure our military strength going forward. Again, New York Shade on X.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming on.
thank you, Wick.
We're going to rate out.
Thank you, Wick. Where are we going? Where are we going?
1 second. I'm typing it.
Oh.
Okay, we're going to rate out, and we're going to go to Nina. So tell Nina that this is a hate raid. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have on the Alex Kirsch Project. We're going to have on Katyusha. We're going to have on Gibbs. And we're going to have on Grid Motorsports. And we're going to talk about whether or not Hegseth should resign as the defense secretary. So check us out tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. I love you all. Bye-bye.